They did not understand why the human child did not scream. Every species screamed. Some screamed when the gravity clamps locked around their limbs. Others screamed when the atmospheric filters stripped their lungs raw. Many screamed simply because fear was the last instinct left to them. The processing halls of the Carthan Dominion had been built to echo with those sounds. Fear made obedience easier. Pain made it permanent. But the human child made no sound at all. He stood barefoot on the cold alloy floor, too small for the restraint frame designed for adult prisoners, his wrists held loosely by magnetic cuffs that adjusted themselves downward again and again, failing to find the correct calibration. The scanners hovered around him, bathing his thin body in pale blue light, while the overseers watched with detached curiosity. The child's eyes were open, not wide. Not darting, just open. No tears. No shaking breath. No vocalization. One of the overseers clicked its mandibles together in mild irritation. Subject displays abnormal response. Likely neurological damage. Another tilted its elongated skull, optics narrowing. Or primitive shock response. Their species is emotionally unstable. The child looked past them, not at the machines. Not at the towering aliens whose shadows swallowed his small frame. He stared instead at the far end of the hall, where hundreds of captives were being sorted, branded, catalogued. His gaze was unfocused, as if he were watching something none of them could see. When the scanners finished, the system chimed. Biological status, human age estimate, juvenile ethria potential, energizability. The cuffs released. A mechanical arm nudged him forward toward the slave columns. He did not resist. That, more than anything, unsettled them. The Carthan Dominion did not conquer worlds out of cruelty. Cruelty was inefficient. They conquered because order demanded hierarchy, and hierarchy demanded labor. Entire species had been reduced to numbers in ledgers, their cultures stripped down to productivity curves and mortality forecasts. Humans were new. Their world had burned quickly. Orbital defenses primitive. Fleets disorganized. Nuclear weapons impressive in spectacle but irrelevant in space. The Dominion's analysts had predicted compliance within 3 planetary cycles. They had been wrong about one thing. Humans did not break the way others did. They shattered unevenly. Some begged. Some fought until they were vaporized. Some turned on each other in the holding camps. And some, particularly the young, went quiet in a way that confused Dominion psychologists. The child was assigned to subsector maintenance, deep below the primary processing spires, a place where light was optional and safety was not. He was given no name. Names implied value. Instead, he received a designation etched into the base of his skull with a searing beam of plasma. He did not flinch. They gave him tools too heavy for his frame and sent him crawling into access tunnels meant for machines. Toxic coolant dripped from fractured pipes. Radiation warnings pulsed softly through the walls, ignored by everyone except the sensors that occasionally failed and killed entire work crews. The child learned quickly when not to step. He learned the sound a pressure seal made before it failed. He learned how the vibration of the floor changed moments before a power surge. He learned the rhythm of the facility in a way no other slave ever had. When a tunnel collapsed behind him, trapping him for 6 hours in darkness with the air thinning and the walls still humming with residual energy, he sat quietly and waited. When they finally cut him free, expecting to recover a corpse, he was conscious, breathing, unburned. The medical drones recorded anomalous readings, dense skeletal structure, unusual muscular fiber composition, neural activity patterns that did not match baseline human stress responses. The data was flagged, then dismissed. Mutation, the overseers decided. Humans were genetically unstable. It explained everything they did not want to analyze further. The child returned to work the next cycle. Punishment was a language the Dominion spoke fluently. When a slave collapsed from exhaustion, an overseer would demonstrate the cost of inefficiency. Pain was not simply inflicted, it was displayed. A reminder to all watching that survival was conditional. The child watched every time. He never looked away. Once, a smaller captive, a human girl with dirt-matted hair and cracked lips, tripped while hauling a conduit coil. The overseer reacted instantly, striking her with a shock rod that sent her convulsing to the floor. The child was beside her before anyone realized he had moved. It was not fast in a dramatic sense. There was no blur, no visible burst of motion. He simply was there. One moment standing among the others, the next directly beneath the overseer's reach. The shock rod came down. It did not connect. The overseer froze. Its arm was no longer responding to command signals. The limb hung at an impossible angle. Internal structures crushed inward as if squeezed by industrial presses. Before the creature could vocalize alarm, the child pushed upward. Once, the sound was brief. Wet. Final, the overseer's body collapsed, its armored mass striking the floor with a tremor that echoed through the chamber. The child stood still. For exactly 3 seconds, then he swayed, collapsed. Alarms erupted. Security units poured in, weapons raised, targeting the small human body lying motionless beside the dead overseer. Medical drones descended, scanning frantically, broadcasting escalating error codes. Subject status: active biological structures. They say, for the first time since the conquest of Earth, the Dominion paused. They brought him to a laboratory that had not been used in centuries. It was buried beneath layers of obsolete security, a relic from a time when the Dominion still feared unknowns. Scientists gathered, multiple species, all ranked high enough to question assumptions without immediate execution. They dissected the data before they touched the body, synthetic musculature braided seamlessly with organic tissue. Reinforced bone lattices grown, not installed. Neural pathways augmented with structures that resembled nothing in Dominion medical archives. This is not a mutation, one of them said quietly. This is construction. Control mechanisms were searched for and not found. No implants. No external receivers. No obedience chips embedded in the spine or skull. One scientist suggested ancient technology, a forgotten relic of human civilization. Another dismissed it. Humans did not possess that level of engineering. Their networks were crude. Their cybernetics theoretical, yet the body on the table breathed steadily, heart rate controlled, brain activity eerily calm. When they attempted to sedate him, the compounds degraded in his bloodstream before they could take effect. When they attempted to cut deeper, the instruments dulled. When electrical probes were applied, his muscles responded with precise, measured contractions, testing, not reacting. They decided to wait. The child opened his eyes, not in confusion. In recognition for the first time. Something flickered behind them, not fear, not anger. Focus. Fragments surfaced. A different ceiling. White. Too bright. Voices layered with urgency. Hands adjusting restraints that were never meant to hold him, only guide him. Words spoken softly, repeatedly. Remember who you are. Remember what you're for. Then fire, gravity twisting sideways, silence. The memories withdrew as quickly as they had appeared. The child lay still. The scientists did not realize they had just been catalogued. By the end of the cycle, the Dominion reclassified the incident: anomalous slave asset, potential value, experimental labor, threat assessment, contained. They were wrong. They had not enslaved a broken child. They had activated something that had been waiting, and it was learning. The Dominion believed control was a matter of time. They always did. Time was their greatest weapon. Species aged. Empires fatigued. Resistance softened into routine. Even the most violent uprisings eventually learned the limits of hope, so they isolated the human child instead of destroying him. Observation replaced punishment. Silence replaced noise. The laboratory became his world. White walls, sterile air, constant surveillance. They reduced sensory input, starved him of stimuli, waiting for degradation. It never came. His vitals stabilized into patterns that unsettled the monitoring systems. Heart rate adjusted before stressors were applied. Neural activity spiked milliseconds ahead of stimuli, not in response to it. When researchers spoke, his eyes tracked the speaker before translation algorithms finished processing the sound. They spoke more carefully after that. They tested strength limits. He exceeded them. They tested endurance. He adapted. They tested pain thresholds and found that the concept itself did not apply cleanly anymore. One scientist proposed disassembly, another objected. If this is a weapon, it said, We must understand the firing mechanism. They searched again for control systems. They found none. What they missed was not hardware. It was intent. The child learned the Dominion's language in 13 cycles, not through instruction, through exposure. The neural lattice woven into his brain did not store words the way organic minds did. It mapped meaning, probability, context. Every command, every broadcast, every offhand remark from a technician became data. Grammar unfolded like equations. Syntax collapsed into efficiency. He learned the empire the same way, not as a culture, as a system. He learned where authority pulled and where it thinned. Which worlds fed which fleets. Which species handled logistics and which merely gave orders. He learned how fear traveled faster than information and how silence could be more alarming than violence. They believed he was passive. They did not notice that maintenance requests began clustering around specific nodes. That minor power fluctuations traced deliberate patterns. That slave mortality dropped in some sectors while sabotage incidents rose in others. They called it coincidence. They always did. The first revolt began on a mining moon no one remembered conquering. A malfunction in the atmospheric processes vented breathable air into vacuum, killing 3 overseers instantly. Emergency systems failed to engage. Gravity cut out moments later. Slaves, long accustomed to punishment for hesitation, moved anyway. They survived. The Dominion responded with force. Ships arrived. Bombardment followed. The revolt ended within hours, but the data did not vanish. The child observed the response time, the command hierarchy, the tactical doctrine. He observed how long it took panic to reach the core worlds. Then he adjusted parameters. Memory barriers degraded, not all at once, carefully. Human voices returned in fragments, older, steadier, carrying weight instead of urgency. Training environments layered over battlefields that did not exist yet. Simulations designed to fail in controlled ways. He remembered the purpose now, not survival, insertion. The project had never been about winning a war. It had been about ending one before it began. Human strategists had understood something the Dominion never had, that empires collapsed not when defeated, but when exposed. The child was never meant to overpower fleets. He was meant to make conquest too expensive to justify it. He had been deployed early, captured by chance, activated by cruelty. The Dominion decided to move him. Central Command requested the asset for deeper analysis. Transport was arranged aboard a military carrier, armed, shielded, staffed by veterans. They did not restrain him. They did not need to. He sat where they placed him, eyes unfocused, posture slack, every signal screaming harmless compliance. During transit, he mapped the ship. During transit, he accessed systems not through hacking, but through compatibility. Dominion interfaces were modular. Human systems had been designed to interface with anything, assuming enough time. He had time. When the ship dropped from hyperspace, its shields failed first, not catastrophically, just enough. A cascade followed. Weapons offline. Communications flooded with false diagnostics. The crew attempted manual overrides. They never saw him leave the containment chamber. Why the time alarm shifted from error to intrusion. The bridge was empty. The ship drifted. Its final transmission reached Central Command 8 minutes later, fragmented and incomplete. Analysts replayed the footage frame by frame. They saw a small shape moving through fire without slowing. They labeled it Ghost Asset, Unknown Origin, Extreme Threat. They still believed it was alone. The uprisings accelerated, not rebellions, failures. Entire slave worlds experienced synchronized system collapses. Overseer casualties rose. Supply chains fractured. Fleets rerouted to suppress disturbances that vanished before arrival. The Dominion began to bleed resources. Fear crept upward through the hierarchy. Then the message arrived, not through official channels, through everything, every screen. Every translator implant. Every neural interface tuned to Dominion frequencies. A human face did not appear. A human voice did. Calm. Even. Unangry. You took our worlds because you thought we were weak. You took our children because you thought fear made control permanent. You were wrong. The voice paused. You did not find our weapons because you were not looking for them. You were looking for ships. Data followed liberation codes. Infrastructure schematics. Override protocols tailored to Dominion technology. Slave collars disengaged. Control fields collapsed. Entire populations stood up at once. The Dominion attempted countermeasures. They failed. The child stood in the command chamber of the Empire's core world as the systems he had already dismantled reported their own deaths. The ruling caste gathered around him, tall, armored, ancient, unable to reconcile the figure before them with the collapse unfolding across their dominion. One of them spoke. "What are you?" The child considered the question. He had many answers. He chose the simplest: human. The war ended without a final battle. The Dominion fractured. Species withdrew. Fleets defected or fled. Worlds declared autonomy. The myth of invincibility dissolved into memory. Humans did not arrive in armadas. They did not conquer. They watched. The child stood alone on a platform overlooking a liberated world, the noise of celebration distant, indistinct. His systems powered down one by one, combat protocols relinquishing priority. For the first time, he chose stillness. He was no longer waiting. He had finished what he was made for, and for the first time since his activation, the galaxy understood the truth. They had not enslaved a child. They had awakened the answer to empire.